So HTTP modules are classes that implement the HTTP module interface, and they're really designed to respond to the ASP.NET lifecycle events. This allows them to provide services to ASP.NET and the executing framework, such as MVC in our case. They can also be used to manipulate the request itself. An important concept to understand about HTTP modules is that many modules can act upon a single request. So together they can provide a wide range of services. Each module can also hook into many lifecycle events, so they're not tied to one specific step in the pipeline. This opens up many development possibilities. One of the great aspects of HTTP modules is the way that event handler code for an application can really be abstracted into a reusable container. Most of what you accomplish in an HTTP module, you could also accomplish inside of the global.asix file, for example. However, by abstracting the code out into a module, you can keep your main project much cleaner, and you can recycle that code across other projects as well. This structure makes sense for HTTP modules since the code within them is often not application specific. For example, a robust logging system might be needed by a range of applications. Instead of bloating your global.asix file and copying code around between your projects, you could just package it up into a module and then reuse that across your applications. Authentication systems often also work across applications, and in ASP.NET, many authentication methods are implemented through modules. Using this architecture, HTTP modules provide many of the important ASP.NET services. Now, from a coding perspective, creating an HTTP module is actually pretty simple. All you need to do is create a class that implements the HTTP module interface, and then you just register your module with the application. Modules can be registered either through code or through the web config. You can also streamline the registration process using that pre-application start method, which we discussed in the last module. The HTTP module interface defines just two methods, init and dispose. Init is called when an HTTP module is instantiated, and it's really used to register methods that will handle the ASP.NET lifecycle events. The dispose method is just used to release any resources when the module's work is done. So how do HTTP modules provide information and services to an executing framework like MVC? Well, the main method is through the HTTP context objects. You've probably come across these objects before as you've worked with MVC or other frameworks, but modules can populate properties on these HTTP context objects, and then those can later be accessed by handlers or MVC itself. So for example, the Windows authentication module will populate the HTTP context.user property, and that provides identity information you can access from within your application. Now, one other really important concept to understand about HTTP modules is that they can act on the request before the MVC framework can if you want them to, as you can see here. In fact, modules can act on the request very early on, starting with the begin request event. This can have powerful implications. There are certain things HTTP modules can actually do very efficiently by avoiding the MVC framework execution entirely. In the next lesson, let's actually look at how we can create our own HTTP module to manipulate the request lifecycle like this.